When we left off in Bleach, Ichigo, Chad, and Uryu set off to go to Hueco Mundo, the land of the Hollows, to get Orihime back. It's the first steps in a whole new adventure, and I couldn't be more excited for it. So starting off, one of the things I was very curious about last chapter was how Uryu was even able to come help Ichigo, considering part of getting his Quincy powers back was the condition that he'd no longer get involved with helping Soul Reapers, and yet here he is with his powers back and helping a Soul Reaper. So as it turns out, he's exploiting something of a loophole so that he can save Orihime, but the interesting part is that Urahara was involved with getting him to come help, because of course he was. Urahara is always there in a pinch when we need him, and always super helpful. Or maybe he's just always pulling all of the strings. I don't know. Maybe I'm stupid for being skeptical of him, but I still am. Uryu's dad and fellow Quincy Ryukin isn't exactly surprised when his son leaves, but what surprised me was Isshin showing up to talk to him. I didn't know they knew each other, and it seems to be they've known each other for a long time. I guess that makes sense. You got a Soul Reaper and a Quincy. I really love this scene because it speaks more to the history of this universe and also just makes me even more desperate to learn about Isshin's backstory. This is just really interesting. Here we have two fathers that seem to reject their spiritual sides for a while, but are back in action now that their sons are deeply involved in all this. Not to mention the difference we've seen in their relationships with their children. Both are definitely hard on their sons, but Isshin in a much less cold way than Ryukin. There's also the fact that Uryu knows about his dad's secret, while Ichigo is still completely in the dark about his own father. I'd love to see more of both of these guys when they were younger and the specifics of their history. Maybe someday we'll get that, but for now, Kubo's just taunting me, dangling it over my head. And that's fine, that's totally cool, we've got more pressing matters to focus on. But eventually, I need that backstory. So anyway, our trio of heroes arrive in Hueco Mundo only to find themselves in a cramped corridor. It's not what any of them expected, and not the best place to have to fight people, but a fight finds them anyway. I love how creepy this panel was of Demora finding them. It just felt so unnerving, the way it's drawn. There's the arm, and it's got like a Pennywise kind of vibe, I don't know. So it's here that we get our first fights in Hueco Mundo, with Chad and Uryu taking on the Guardians of the Gateway that they came in from. You know me, I've been so excited to come to Hueco Mundo and see more hollows, particularly for how Kubo draws them, and he never disappoints. And particularly, I really like Icewinger's design here. He's like a plague doctor pterodactyl man, and I'm all for it. Just yet another great hollow design from Kubo, and a memorable one too, because I immediately recognized him as the guy that was there when Grand Fisher transformed like a long time ago. Back then, when he was only very briefly shown, I assumed that he was some scientist hollow, and maybe he is, but from this it seems like he's just like a security guard. But I wonder why he was there for Grand Fisher's transformation. Were they just like experimenting on him close to a gateway so they could send him back to the living world? I don't know. I remember him being there. I recognized him immediately, so good on you, Kubo, for making a very memorable design. And I love that these fights really gave Chad and Uryu a chance to shine. They've been kind of left out of the action for a while in favor of seeing some of the other Soul Reapers fight, so it's cool to see them in the fray again. Working together and taking on each other's initial opponent is a simple but fun solution for the 2-on-2 fight, and it was so satisfying to see them dismantle the enemies that were most similar to them and play to their strengths. It's also interesting that Icewringer seems pretty calculating and intelligent overall. He even kind of prides himself on his intelligence, but he doesn't know what a Quincy is. It really makes me wonder how much of a known entity the Quincies are to the Hollows. We know Quincies used to hunt them in the living world, but we don't really know the extent of how much interaction the two groups have had beyond that. And with the Quincies practically being extinct nowadays thanks to the Soul Reapers, it could just be that they've kind of faded from conversation over time, or maybe my smart pterodactyl boy is just not as smart as he thinks he is. With how much I love his design, I kind of wish Icewringer was one of the Espada just so I could see more of it, but alas, this seems to be the end for him. The whole place begins to self-destruct, burying Icewringer beneath the rubble, but not before he shares a really cryptic warning about Aizen, and I loved this. It really built up Aizen as a threat. We already know he is, but there's something still so effective about having others remind us. It makes him feel like more of a force of nature that we should try to avoid than an enemy we should try to go confront. This might be the last we see of Iceringer, so if it is, thank you for the warm welcome to Hueco Mundo, you beautiful Pteranodon. But there are plenty, and I mean plenty, of new enemies to still meet. Because now that we're in the Hollow's homeworld, we get our first real good look at the members of the Espada, so let's just go around the table and I'll give my impressions on them. Please be advised, this is only after a panel of all of them sitting together, and a couple of them saying a thing or two during the following scene. So this is really just about vibes. Here we go. To start, we've got Ukiura, who we obviously already know, and he's looking as forlorn as ever. No surprise there. He probably thinks every last person at the table is trash. I love the garbage man. Alright, so next to him we've got this guy. He looks bored. He talks about how he'd prefer to be sleeping, which is a sign that this man is probably extremely cool and calm and would rather be somewhere else, which typically in shonen means he's gonna be awesome. I can empathize with choosing sleep over work meetings. I think I'll like him. We'll see. Next to him we've got this guy with that crazy hood collar thing. It's hard to really see him in the intro panel, but during the actual scene he's got an eye patch and kind of a weird smile. You know, that kind of anime smile that feels a little extra cartoony, or maybe that signifies someone's a little crazy, but it's that piece of clothing behind his head that really stands out. The man looks like the Pixar lamp. Then we've got this blonde woman with her collar pulled up over the lower part of her face. Design-wise, this could mean she's got something interesting about her mouth, maybe? I mean, notably, she seems to be the only woman that, from what I can tell, in the Espada. I also like the sword on her back, but it seems like an inconvenient place to have to reach. Probably something up with her mouth, for sure. To her left is this guy with the really tall mask covering his face. I really like this design. There's something almost aristocratic about the clothes he's wearing, and the mask makes him stand out a lot in this group, since he's the only one with his face completely hidden. To me, he honestly looks like if a bishop chess piece was a person. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what he reminds me of. I really like the look though, he looks cool. Then there's good old Yami. I'm not the biggest Yami fan, but he's functional as the big brute. Even at this table, his sheer size stands out. And next to Yami we got an older gentleman with a mustache. He looks like a crotchety geezer who's not in the best mood. I like the tiara on his head, which I assume was part of his hollow mask. And one thing I know about anime, including Bleach, don't underestimate the old men. There's a reason they survived this long. And beside him is this pink-haired guy with glasses. He just seems to be enjoying himself. If we're following the laws of the universe, these glasses mean he's smart, or a nerd, or he's gonna pull an Aizen and take them off and completely blow my mind with some reveal. We'll see. Interesting look though, doesn't seem that intimidating, which means he probably is. The guy next to him is very stoic looking, and I'm liking the metal mohawk. He strikes me as just a very calm individual, but we'll see. There's a couple of these guys who they seem calm, which is scary. And the last guy at the table is our boy Grimmjow, newly reinstated after taking his seat back. I'm happy for him. So that's the Espada, from what we know so far. I love groups of villains like this. I look at this table and I just get excited by the fact that at some point in the near future, I'm gonna get to see all of these DarrenCurtis in action. They all have their own stories, their own relationships to one another, and their own place in the narrative. It just makes it exciting to get to see them like this before I really get to know them. Grimmjow and Ukiura are both fantastic, so I hope at least some of their peers measure up as characters. Also, it's a little moment, but I adore how casual Aizen is about Hueco Mundo being infiltrated. And I also just noticed that with the 10 Espada and the 3 Rogue Soul Reapers, we've got 13 higher ranked enemies, so it's similar to how we had the 13 captains in Soul Society, and this, along with the inverted colors of the DarrenCurtis, really makes this feel like a warped reflection of Soul Society, and I love that. Maybe that was intentional, maybe Aizen's kind of doing his usual trolling, but I like it, even if it's just, a little design choice by Kubo. Really like that. We also got another chance to see Grimmjow being Grimmjow and Aizen being Aizen. Grimmjow's always going to try to do his own thing, authority be damned, but Aizen is always going to want to be in complete control, and has the power to make it happen. We see that as powerful as the Espada are, they have to submit to Aizen. I do wonder though if this will all lead to Grimmjow really turning on Aizen and eventually being something of an ally. We'll have to see, but I don't think someone like Grimmjow will ever completely bend the knee to anyone. It just doesn't seem to be in his nature. When our heroes emerge from the underground corridor, we finally get a really good look at Hueco Mundo, and I love it. It's appropriately empty, a barren desert of white sand that just seems so dead, just utterly lifeless. Even the trees apparently aren't even really trees. This is the perfect place for hollows to be when they aren't in the living world feeding on souls. Kubo did a great job with it, taking a more minimalistic approach to showcase the emptiness and the starvation of the hollows, while also making it feel like something vast and enormous, and it's this vastness that extends to Aizen's palace, and how the trees look like sticks next to it, and that it's so big that it seems much closer than it actually is. It just really makes it clear how large this world is. I don't know, Hueco Mundo just feels right. Where else would hollows be if not here? It's perfect for them. Well, we finally made it. Kubo's establishing the new setting, these new enemies, and getting us ready for whatever new obstacles are ahead of us. It's all really exciting, and I'm not really sure what to expect from Hueco Mundo, especially after we see a kid being chased by hollows, but that's a discussion for next time. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, as always. I appreciate it. Please comment, like, subscribe, and yeah, very excited to see where we go from here in this land of the hollows. See you next time.